So this Wipro idea, how did it get born? Like, how was it born?
The idea of Wipro?
Yeah.
Just the way that you are setting up your company, the way you set up a company, somebody thinks it's a good idea. This is a product that I understand, and I want to do more with it. Isn't that what you're doing? You want to do more with AI, right? So you set up your company and then you grow it. It's just that he was much older than you when he set it up.
And I welcome you all to the second day of VLF 2024, India's first non-fiction literary festival and the largest in Central India in partnership with Maha Metro. We function on lines similar to other established literary festivals across the country, but with the difference that we have purely non-fiction authors here in action in Nagpur. Thank you for being here today. This grand festival that brings together the fantastic minds of India is only possible because of our sponsors. I would like to thank all our sponsors for their unconditional support. VLF in alliance with Maha Metro is running a year-long hashtag contest. We would love it if all of you take a picture of yourself while riding the metro and post it on any social platform and tag VLF and Maha Metro with the hashtag Read and Ride. The first prize is books worth rupees 10,000 and the second prize will be books worth rupees 5,000. We are also running another unique Make Your Own Bookmark contest. We have bookmarks available at the dais over there with us, and which we request you to collect and decorate it as per your wish. Click a picture, post it on any social platform, and tag VLF and Maha Metro. Lucky winners will get a copy of a book featured at VLF, which has been selected by our team. We begin our day with an extraordinary book, Azim Premji, The Man Behind Billions by Sundeep, Khanna and Varun Sood. Talking with Mr. Sundeep will be Mr. R. Ramkrishnan. R. Ramkrishnan is a seasoned entrepreneur, angel investor, and an accomplished business builder. He is a qualified chartered accountant. He is the founder of the Nagpur headquartered Axino Capital, which has global footprints in 50 countries. He actively participates with Vivekanand Kendra, the Vigyan Bharati, the Indus Entrepreneurs, and he's a patron at VLF. And he's part of several other non-for-profit organizations, as he believes in the power of ideas to change the face of entrepreneurship. Currently, he serves as the first employee at Immerse AI, a deep tech startup founded by his prodigious twins, Abir and Anay. Recently, Abir and Anay have been honored by the Honorable Prime Minister for their work at Immerse AI. Ramkrishnan has Swami Vivekanand as his idol, and so he tries to strike a happy balance between what he calls Vedanta and Vyavhar. Our author today, Mr. Sundeep Khanna, has been a business journalist ever since the first personal computers came to India. In a career spanning 3 decades, Sundeep has donned multiple hats across corporate and editorial roles and is one of the foremost chroniclers of business in India. He writes not only on business but also on varied topics such as the rise and fall of the iconic house of Nirulas in Delhi and the timeless charms of Tintin even at the age of 95. He writes regular columns for Money Control and Live Mint. His books include The Liberalization Story, a collection of essays on one of the most seminal events in Indian business. We are extremely pleased to have him here at VLF today to talk about his book, Azim Premji, The Man Behind Millions, a biography of one of the world's best-known philanthropists, which he has co-authored with Varun Sood. Can we please have the AI created by Immerse?
Greetings. I am Azim Premji, AI created by Inverse AI. I am so excited to meet Sundeep Khanna today here at the VLF, who has written a beautiful book, The Man Beyond the Billions. There is very little about me in the public domain and social media, but the dogged persuasion and a great flair for writing has brought this book to life. I am thankful to Sundeep for such a great storytelling. I welcome you all and wish Sundeep and Rama a great session.
May we have a big round of applause as Mr. Ramkrishnan escorts Mr. Sundeep to the stage for an informative session.
A very warm welcome, Sundeep. I mean, always a pleasure catching up with you, chatting on all the way from the airport to the hotel. How do you find Nagpur, the hospitality, the warmth, the weather, the people?
I haven't seen much of Nagpur yet. This is my third trip, and unfortunately, I just haven't been able to go around and take a look at the city. But the hospitality has been fantastic. Thanks to you, Abhay, Sachin, all of you. And it's actually wonderful to be in a literary festival where you're made to feel so warm and not one of thousands of people just hanging around there.
Correct. So little late. Nagpur is little late on Sunday, so you'll find that in the audience. So great. So book lovers, the next 40-45 odd minutes, we would like to go and listen to the man himself who has met Azim Premji. Not only Azim Premji, but 200 executives of Wipro, right? Building this book grounds up, lot of interviews, lot of dogged persuasion, right? Azim Premji himself acknowledged that in the initial note that he said. And also, more importantly, the book goes beyond the billions, right? Not behind the billions, beyond the billions. Right? That's what the book is all about. The man beyond the billions, right? I read it multiple times. Beyond, behind, for the billions, all of that. So Sandeep, we would first like to understand, what made you write this book and how difficult it was, because when you Google, when you see the social media footprints, there is very little, of course, at that time, but even now, in terms of who this gentleman Azim Premji is and how difficult it was. I understand he was very shy. He was man of few words, right? I also see that it took you 10 long months to meet him, in spite of uh, doing all jugaad to meet him through Kiran Mazumdar Shaw, right? Anuaga, putting a word to meet you. But you were out there in Wipro. You met the professionals, but you couldn't meet him.
We couldn't.
Right. While he wanted to meet you, but not that he did not want to meet you, but he was a man of few words. So tell us this story of writing this book, meeting him, right?
Sure, sure. Before I start, let me just clarify two things. One is this was an unauthorized biography. It's important to make that distinction because there are authorized books where a company commissions you and say, please do this book. This was unauthorized, so Wipro was not in any way obliged to get us to meet Azim Premji. It was entirely at his discretion. And the kind of man that he is, he said that I have no problems with your people doing the book, but I have nothing to say for myself. I thought that was a very significant statement that he made. And he said, you can talk to whoever you want, all my senior executives. But he didn't meet us during the course of doing this book. However, since I've been a journalist for close on to 35 years, I've met him in the past on a couple of occasions. And very important, my co-author, Varun Sood, who's not here today, I wish he was, he covers the IT industry. He's probably one of the best reporters on the IT industry. He's met him multiple times. So we were able to, from our experience from the past, we were able to pull out anecdotes about his life in terms of our meetings with him. And I remember one particular meeting that I had with him very early on, I think in the early 90s, when he was still in Mumbai. And he was supposed to meet me at a particular time, I forget, whatever, 11 o'clock in the morning. And he was late by 5 minutes. And I was sitting in the room with his corporate communications people, and 5 minutes for a leader of that kind, you don't even notice it. But he came in 5 minutes late. He apologized profusely, but I could see he was very upset. He was angry about something. So we had our interview, we spoke, and at the end of it, 45 minutes, he left the room. So I asked his people, he seemed a little upset. So they said that what had happened was that somebody in the company had been caught fudging his train bill. So instead of taking a whatever class, second class, he filed for a first class thing. And this man was so upset about it, and it was probably a matter of not more than 500 to $1,000 in those days. But yet for him, that was the core of Wipro. Every time a bill or anything was fudged for him, it was over. We might as well shut it down. He would say, let's close down this company. I can't work like this. So that was my first meeting with him. It was my first introduction to him. And the interesting thing was that when we did the book almost 30 years after that meeting, I realized the man hasn't changed an inch. Even the remark saying, I have nothing to say for myself, was quintessential Azim Premji. That, what do I talk about myself? So that was the thing. You asked about why we got into this book. Yeah. Is this better? Yeah. Thanks. Right. So if you go back in 2018, he made a huge philanthropic donation to his foundation, where he wrote off almost 90% of the value of his stock, although he kept the voting rights to those shares. And it was obviously a seminal moment in terms of philanthropy in India, because nobody has ever made a philanthropic donation of that size, scale, and significantly, there have been philanthropic donations. Warren Buffett, for instance, a lot of people have made under the Giving Pledge. Most of them say, on my death, a certain amount or my fortune or 80% of my fortune will go to the foundation. Azim Premji, in his lifetime, said, I am writing off 90% of my wealth, which at that point of time amounted to almost $21 billion, to my foundation. And leaving, as compared to that large amount, leaving very little for his sons and the rest of his family. So it was in the news. The thing is that as journalists for 30 years, we were still very skeptical, saying, a lot of rich tycoons do these things for publicity. Obviously, it's all over the newspapers and magazines. So we really wanted to find out if he means what he said. Is he going to, go back on his decision when Wipro is not doing so well, or things of that kind? So it started with a series of articles that I commissioned for my newspaper, Mint, which I was, at that point of time, I was the executive editor of Mint in those days. And I asked Varun to go and actually explore and talk to people and find out how much of it was real and how much of it was, public relations. And from there on, the interest started. And, after that, the book was just a journalistic exercise. It was, in a sense, a continuation of our reporting efforts. We said, now let's put it down in the form of a book.
That's awesome. You've sort of covered the whole range of things. So let me pick up one of the threads. Philanthropy, right? Let us start from there and then go back, not in a structured manner, how we jumped into the business and all. So this is amazing, friends. Philanthropy was not much talked about. Yes, Warren Buffett had done some global pledge at that time. Just to put things in perspective, $21 billion was a lot of money. Around 67% of the wealth that he had, 90% of the wealth. And this was the largest philanthropic contribution by any individual from India, among the top 5 globally, outbeating Richard Branson, Michael Bloomberg, even Elon Musk. So that was the kind of path-breaking work the philanthropy was, right? And on that question, let me take you to the contrasting nature, DNA, character, personality of Azim Premji himself. So he used to be called Uncle Scrooge, right? Very miser. He would keep a tab on people traveling. He would have $10 burger for 2-3 of them in a day, even in the US, on the one side. And on the other side, he pledges 90% plus of the wealth for a cause. What a contrast, right? So tell us about these contrasts in his life, right? I mean, it's very difficult to understand. Once you become rich, you want to have Gucci, Armani, all of that. But he doesn't do it for himself. He doesn't allow his leadership team also to do it, right? Tell us this contrast in the personality. You've seen him very up close and personal, right? Help us understand this. As entrepreneurs, what are the lessons that we need to pick up from?
Right. Actually, from his perspective, there is no conflict between the two. The first, of course, is that the objective of an entrepreneurial exercise or an effort isn't to make money. He believes that if that's what you're getting into a business for, then you're on the wrong track. You've got to have a bigger passion than that. You've got to want to build something, or you want to build something for people, or you want to give back to society. So, that's kind of defines his entrepreneurial style, which is that the purpose is more important than the money. However, that's not to say that the money is not important. So, we've chronicled that in the book, that, the idea of philanthropy actually came to him much later in life. It's not something that, a young man, he wanted to do good for society. He was very clear, in fact, for many years that it's not my job to build infrastructure in Bangalore. And, people like Narayan Murthy and all wanted to build a road. And he said, that's not my job. I pay my taxes for the government to do it. And it's, I think, at some point of time, he realized that if he wants to do something meaningful for society, the first step has to be to make money. Because if you don't have the money, you don't have the capital, it's going to be difficult to actually contribute meaningfully to society. So, and you know, once in 2000, when the company went to the US market and they listed there, and very briefly, he was also the richest man in India at that point of time. In fact, the joke used to be with his personal wealth, he could have bought a majority stake in companies like Reliance at that point of time. But of course, it was notional because it was a stock market boom at that point. But once he got the money and you know he realized the flow of money was going to keep on coming, and the IT industry obviously was on the cusp of taking off at that point of time, then it started, you know, he started toying with the idea of what do I do with my money now? He had no use for it, no personal planes, no, I mean, his house is, he stays on the outskirts, very close to the Wipro factory. And you know, he urges most of his senior leadership team to actually stay in the Electronic City so that they can avoid the commute. It's a man of very simple tastes. He likes good food, but that's like, you know, he goes to the street side, he'll have some bheja curry or something of that kind. You know, so what do you do with your money? You made all this money, and he also believed that, you know, it's not like he deserved the money. It's not, it's all mine because I've done this great thing. It's just that he believed that's what, you know, the opportunity has led up to. And you know, and from there on, the idea of, okay, what do we do in terms of a structured manner with the money that I have made? We like to call it philanthropy. For him, it's just an endeavor. So he set up the Azim Premji Foundation. And the interesting thing about the man is that he will not cut checks. So, you know, a charitable foundation going to him and saying, you know, we're doing this event, will you donate? He doesn't believe in that because he believes that the money that goes to charity or to philanthropy also needs to be accounted for in exactly the same way that, you know, money in a business does. So you account for the money that you know, whatever money you make in your business. So similarly for philanthropy. So he set up a foundation. He got in somebody who really believed in education in India. So there was also a lot of debate on what do you do in terms of philanthropy. Do you know, get into education, healthcare? There were various other things. He felt that fundamentally education had the ability to transform people's lives. So, which is why the Wipro Foundation works exclusively in the area of education. They do a bit of other work as well, but mostly in the area of education. Dilip Ranjekar is somebody who, you know, he does it for him. So you know, so just going back to your question, no real conflict. Philanthropy and business are actually two sides of the same coin. That's what
Lovely, lovely. That's not a contrast; it's a complement. It's a way of looking at it.
Absolutely.
And also the other aspect of contrast or complement or perspective, if I may put, is that his personal life was shrouded with a lot of privacy, right? No social media. You'll not find much. At the same time, this is one man who puts India on the global map in terms of values, ethics, transparency, right? In the 60s, late 60s and 70s, the Indian business houses were not known for transparency, right? We definitely complement the ITES sector to bring transparency. And Azim Premji was at the forefront of bringing these value-driven philosophies. And that's what brought a lot of capital to India, right? Would you like to talk about the values that he brought? What did you see in the interviews, in the people that you interviewed, right? Were they trying to window dress? Because you went grounds up, right? He didn't give you the time in the initial few months, and you talked to Senapati, you talked to Lakshmi Narayan, Lux. And what did you see in the culture of that organization on the value front?
Yeah, I mean, very early on, I think all the IT companies, the IT pioneers, including Narayan Murthy, Nandan, you know, Premji, they all figured that good corporate governance also adds up to good business. Because the point that you made, I think it's a very interesting point, which is that if you want to get in capital or you want to get in even, you know, business from clients abroad, they're going to expect a level of transparency and a level of corporate governance, which we were probably not used to in the 70s and 80s. So to the extent of, you know, and increasingly we find that a lot of Indian companies now understand that, you know, that ethics isn't just a value system, it's also good business. and of course the credit for that goes to people like Premji, Narayan Murthy, all of them. The interesting thing is that not only did they, did their own companies practice those ethical standards, but they became the kind of, it became the benchmark for other entrepreneurs who then got into the IT industry. So subsequently, for instance, Shubhrata Bakshi and some of the others, Ashok Suta, who went off, left Wipro, around 2002, they went on to set up another company, Mindtree. And the value system was exactly the same. And then 10 years later, Ashok Soota left and set up Happiest Minds. And there is a continuity in terms of the ethical standards, the corporate governance standards, the value system of all three companies, which in a sense straddle three different decades and three different eras of Indian IT industry. Today it's a huge behemoth. Even by 2010, it was a large enough industry. But if you go back in time in the 90s or even the early 2000s, you went to the US and you tried to, you tried to snag a order from somebody or get an order from a company for IT services. It wasn't easy. They were going to look at a lot of things. You didn't have the reputation. Nobody knew. India didn't have the credibility as an IT nation at that point of time. So they would ask a lot more questions of the company in terms of its, in terms of its corporate governance standards than they would do today also. Both in terms of quality and in terms of ethics. And to the extent that it became a part of business practice for almost everybody in the IT industry. And the one company which was an exception, Satyam, we know what happened to that. It imploded just because of that. Fine company, excellent company, very well run. But unfortunately, that one issue of ethics, so it brings home to us what he was practicing all these years and how that's good business for everyone.
Lovely, lovely. I think just connecting the dots on global companies looking at values, ethics, discipline. I go to the question on the wonderful story that you covered about GE, Jack Welch,
Yeah, sure.
right? And they were trying to figure out a partner for India, and they had zeroed on two companies, HCL and Wipro. And it was the medical division of GE. And they had, without meeting Wipro, they had finalized HCL. Something happened, maybe we don't know behind the scenes, right? But they didn't turn up to even meet Wipro. And then if you can help us understand that story,
Sure.
how Azim Premji swung into action. It was a fairly large company. Wipro was a nice large company, top 3 in the ITES. So what did he do as an entrepreneur? Right, there's a lot of lessons for each one of us. We have faced it so often in each one of our business, be it B2C or B2B, more B2B. So tell us that story, how he exactly turned the table,
Yeah,
right?
sure,
And then the partnership was legendary. The friendship was legendary between Premji and
Jack
Welch.
No, that's thanks for bringing that up, because it actually exposes us to a dimension of the man which is a little less known. But in fact, we were just having a chat about persistent system you were mentioning. It also brings out the super salesman that Azim Premji is. He's serious about his business, and he's no holds barred when it comes to business to get an order. But just to go back over the story, to be fair, all that happened was that it was a GE's medical division. They were looking for a partner in India, and they had zeroed in on HCL and Wipro. And in those days, the flights from and this was out of their Tokyo office. So the flights to Tokyo came to Delhi. They came to Delhi, met the HCL people, and they were reasonably happy with HCL. And they said, let's close it here. I mean, why now travel to Bangalore, do another thing? I mean, I guess they were just lazy. They almost finalized the joint venture. And that's when Premji heard about it from his people, saying that, they've closed the deal. There's no point. They were waiting to kind of welcome them to the Bangalore office and to show them around. And they went and told Premji that, unfortunately, these guys have already taken a decision and it's not happening with us. And Premji was really upset. I mean, he said, how can you just accept it sitting, like this? So he said, let's write a letter to Jack Welch, who was then the chairman of the company, and not directly involved with this particular business, obviously as chairman of GE. And so he dictated a 12-page letter, which in those days had to be faxed to Jack Welch's office, explaining, why it wasn't, one, fair, and two, why GE should tie up with a company like Wipro, because the value systems of the two companies, even though they were very different in terms of size and scale, were more similar than the value systems of GE and HCL. So you know that I think when Jack Welch saw that letter, he was a little intrigued, because I don't think anybody had ever written a letter like that. You lose a contract, you lose a contract. You know, you kind of sort of accept it and move on. And two, he was intrigued by the fact that this man was not saying my product is superior or my technology ability is superior, but my value system is superior to my competitors and more in tune with you as a large company. And the GE of the late 70s and late 80s was very different from the GE of today. It was, it was the most admired corporation in the world. And for a man to very confidently say that, we have similar value systems. And he was unapologetic about the fact that, my company is as good as yours. So Welch asked his people in Tokyo to take another look. They traveled to Bangalore, and the rest, as they say, is history. They signed a joint venture which survives still today. And I think it's one of the prides of Wipro and, of course, of GE. Subsequently, Jack Welch and Azim Premji went on to become close. I won't say personal friends, because from whatever I've heard, the man doesn't have too many personal friends. But they were certainly very good professional friends, to the extent that when Wipro listed on Nasdaq in 2000, in the dinner that evening, Jack Welch was one of the guests, and I think Welch expected some stock in Wipro at that point of time, which Azim Premji wasn't giving.
Uncle Scrooge would not give that.
He wouldn't give free stock to anyone. So a lot of very good lessons for any entrepreneur. Most of us, anybody who's tried to do a business knows there are these points in a business where you have the option of giving up or saying, look, I believe in my product, my company, my value system, or whatever I have, and I'm going to fight for it till the end. And I think that's really the point of this particular story.
Lovely story, a lot of value. So, taking the story and then going flashback in the late 60s, when Azim Premji was in his 20s, 21 to be precise, right? And the sudden sad demise of his father, he had to drop out of Stanford and join the business, right? And what was the business? It was a vegetable oil business with a paltry $2 million. $2 million may look like big, but it was what? 10 crore at 50 rupees, right? Rupee dollar. So 9-10 crores of revenue from not so glamorous business, not so glamorous venture, versus a young guy studying in the US, Stanford, a big, huge, successful dream in front of him. Tell us stories around that, right? How difficult it was when he came back here and stepped into the shoes. Of course, his mother was the chairperson at that time. What all did he do? How did he get into the groove? What transformation? We know the transformation today, right? It's so sort of hindsight for us. But tell us the story, the journey. What are the hits and misses? What were the pitfalls? What were the failures? How did this very thought of making an IT conglomerate, because IT was not in fashion at that time. Of course, NASSCOM was writing reports about India at that time. But tell us this, in little detail, more so because we are at a point of inflection in technology today, right? A similar kind of inflection with AI, right? A lot of business are getting disrupted. The business models ought to change now. So tell us, what are the leaf templates that we should pick up from there, from that journey? Hits, failures, misses, ups and downs. What went right, what went wrong?
Sure. So, one of the things that I've gathered from writing about men like Azim Premji and a couple of other entrepreneurs, Indian entrepreneurs subsequently, is that successful entrepreneurship rests on opportunity and your ability to, identify and seize the opportunity. And more often than not, the opportunity is available to a lot of people, but it's that successful entrepreneur or entrepreneurs who are able to catch it early and then stay with it. Have the ability to say, whatever the pitfalls on the road, on the way, I'm going to stay with this. And going back to the 1960s, 68, when Azim Premji comes back from Stanford, 21-year-old boy, not really exposed to the business. It's not as though he had an elder brother, so who was probably more likely to, his father probably groomed him to be in the business. Young Azim Premji didn't have much of an interest in business. He didn't go to study business at Stanford. In fact, this thing was that he wanted to study economics and then actually join a multilateral agency. So he comes back at 21. He sees this business. One, there is a lot of debt in the company at that point of time, relative, of course, to their to the size, and two, it's a very primitive business. It's even the vegetable oils plant that they have in Amalner. It's not a very modern plant, so his systematic training from his birth. One thing that strikes him is that the first thing I need to do is to clean up my current business before I can start looking out at diversification or other businesses. Also, by the 70s, what had started happening was because of health reasons, vegetable oils was no longer, a very popular product. And again, now that's a point where he takes a decision which, for the future turns out great, but it's a very dicey decision. He decides that we shouldn't be backing a product like this, which is not good for the health of the people, And that's when he starts looking for other businesses. We've written about it in the book. He actually explores a business in scooters, for instance, but realizes the capital intensity of the business. Wipro also gets into furniture. So he's toying with other businesses, and then this huge opportunity presents itself in 1978 when George Fernandez chases IBM out of the country, and for years before that, for the last 30, 40 years, IBM has been dumping its old mainframes in IITs and a couple of other things. Now, the crisis for the government and for these institutions is who's going to maintain these large mainframes. And anybody who understands technology knows that mainframes are the most difficult to maintain and keep them going. And you've got this massive data, census data, for instance. ISI, Indian Institute of Science, has a lot of data on it. So a couple of entrepreneurs realized that this opportunity exists. And actually a company called IDM, it was set up by people who left IBM and said, why don't we just maintain these systems? And the government also sets up Computer Maintenance Corporation at that point of time. And that's the start of the Indian IT journey. And that's when men like Shiv Nadar by 1981, they worked in DCM Data Products, an IT firm, and they realized that there is a nascent opportunity here. They seized the opportunity. In a sense, Wipro is actually late to the party. By then, 1983, Infosys started with software. Wipro is still toying with the idea of what do we do? Do we make mini computers? And they're lucky they get an order from the Indian Army to make ruggedized systems. But they have good people, and that's been Azim Premji's strength through his career. He's able to identify great talent, people like Sridhar Mitta, for instance, who joined early on, and retain them. Despite the fact that almost anybody who's worked in Wipro will tell you that they are not very good paymasters. It's not the most generous of companies because Premji doesn't believe in sharing wealth among the wealthy. So Wipro has those early start, and by the 70s, 80s, they're actually into hardware. And Wipro is an excellent hardware company in the Indian context. But by the 80s, there is a deluge of people, basically assembling personal computers. And so by the 90s, it's evident that this party is not going to last too long. And that's when they take a strategic decision. And to be fair, the market leader in that was TCS, which through the 60s and 70s had been doing some development work for other companies, including those in the Tata group. So in a sense, the point I'm making is that Wipro is not really a leader, but does a fabulous job of catching up and figuring out that quality is the core even to the IT business. And by the time, by the late 90s, they are recognized as the best in terms of quality and what they deliver to clients.
Oh, lovely. And also talk about what are some of the ventures that they failed in, right? Financial services was one of them. What happened?
Absolutely.
They were also planning to set up a scooter factory at that time. So tell us about the ventures that they looked at the drawing board stage, went ahead, tried, fiddled around and failed.
No, that's actually very interesting. I mean, you do multiple businesses yourself, and lots of people in this room who run businesses, and I'm sure you'll understand this. There is almost nobody who's been successful in business by saying, one business, I set it up on day one, and that's all I'll do for the rest of my life. It just doesn't work like that. And so Wipro was no different. They got into various kinds of businesses. Scooters, at least they abandoned it at the blueprint stage, realizing that it's going to be very capital intensive. And by then, Bajaj was a huge thing. They realized that they couldn't ever compete with them. But they got into financial services. They set up an NBFC in mid 90s, which was also the heyday of the NBFC movement at that point of time, because consumer credit wasn't available easily from banks. And they were actually very successful because people trusted the Wipro name and they would actually go to them for loans. The problem was that I guess in Azim Premji's mind and in the conditioning of the company, they didn't realize that it was a very dirty business. NBFC meant chasing, the loans that you had given out. Many of them would not come back. People would not repay, and it was a messy business. And also it required the kind of unethical smarts that I don't think Wipro was capable of doing. To his credit, they wound up the business, they closed it down, and paid off from his personal, money. He paid off everybody that Wipro owed anything to. I think he suffered a loss of about 400 crores on that business, but wrote it off clean, absolutely got out of it. I don't think anybody had any regrets in the market that, Wipro didn't leave anybody unhappy in terms of creditors. So those were the businesses that they got into. Hardware was another business which they did for many years, almost 15 years. It was actually the core of the company. And like I said, by the late 90s, assembling computers in India was no longer one viable or profitable. And they stopped doing that. But the interesting thing was that the experience that they gained from making their own computers and maintaining those the computers came in very useful, because their engineering services division, it's actually one of their big this thing. So when they do business across the world, that's part of the business that actually come in useful for them.
Lovely. You also talked about competition, the other leadership. So in your book, you make a mention that in the last count, Wipro produced 600 entrepreneurs running 450 startups/companies, right? That's a tall number. You also talk about his friendship with the competition, right? At that, and those were the times when the quarterly results were always out. TCS, Infi, Wipro, all were looking out for the earnings quarter, right? And the competition was tough because they were chasing the same set of clients, right? In the US largely, and then in the Europe. So what was his relationship with the competitors? How did he treat these guys who left the leadership team, right? Ashok Soota and all of them, right? Left the leadership position and started a competing venture. Also the competition in terms of TCS, Infi. What was his thought process? How did he gel with them? And things of those nature.
Yeah, all of you must have read over the last couple of months, Wipro has been having a running battle with a couple of its senior executives who left the company, including their CFO, and they've, they want a clawback of whatever salary or thing. And it's actually come as a big surprise to me, because the Wipro that Azim Premji built over 50 years of his career, and he's been out of the operations for the last 4 years now, 5 years now, is not a company that did this. People left, they stayed friends. Ashok Soota happily talked to us about this book, although when he left, Azim Premji was very upset because he was the president of the company. In many ways, he built Wipro through the 90s. And then in 2000, he decided to, part company. Similarly, others who've left the company, we met many of them, and they had nothing but the highest respect for the man. With competition, I met Nandan Nilekani for this book, and there is a remark of his in the book where he said that Indian business and society is fortunate to have a man like this in our midst, And so the thing is that he has a bit of a patriarch status. People look up to him, and I've met executives of Infosys and other companies who say that, they were traveling on a flight with him, and he would incessantly quiz them about their business. And you'd say, I've met people who say, look, I'm not supposed to talk about my company to you. I can't be sharing my numbers with you. What are your margins? How have you grown your margins? And that's actually two parts of two aspects of this man's personality. One is his ability to ask questions. And I've, as a business journalist, I've met lots of business tycoons, and the contrast between some and most. And when I say most, are people who freely express their views about everything, ranging from the weather to politics, and of course their own business, because they don't have time to listen to you. Whereas this man, it's very difficult to get two words out of him, but he will ask questions. He will keep on quizzing you, and that's where he gathers all his information. And he has this little notepad in which he keeps taking notes, and he will remind you. So you will go back today and send me this by the evening, and so he's very particular about that. And the other thing is that people look up to him. So all his competitors, they had good things to say about him. I think it's a kind of a club that they all part of. He takes advice. For instance, we met Mr. Ramadurai, who was the TCS boss and his arch rival. And he would meet him at Wellington Club in Bombay, and they would have breakfast. And he would ask him, "What do you think I should be doing in my business?" Now that's unbelievable. These are like you mentioned. They're fighting for the same pie in terms of business. He had that relationship with them, but to be fair, he was also a bit of a bad loser. So he didn't take business loss or a loss of a contract very well, and he would turn a little churlish for some time. But having said that, with the IT industry, he has a fantastic relationship. He doesn't mix too much with outside the IT industry. He's not very comfortable with other industrialists or businessmen. He doesn't also obviously socialize too much. He has some good personal friends. Kiran Mazumdar is a close personal friend of his, and they share a very good relationship. He listens to people. I think that's a big lesson for all of us, not just in business but in life. He will listen even if he takes a decision which is not based on what he's heard people. And people tell me that when somebody wants to leave, they would go to him, and they would say the most difficult part about leaving Wipro is these hours and hours of walks that he would do with you, chat with you, talk with you. I remember talking to a person called Sudeep Nandi, who used to head their US business. And Sudeep said that, I told him I want to quit, I want to move out, I want to go to a private equity firm. And he said, you come home and we'll have a beer. And he said, 5, 6 beers. And after that, I'd say, Mr. Premji, I really need to go now. He said, okay, let's meet again tomorrow and have another beer. So he wouldn't let people go easily. It wasn't in his nature because he felt competitive about them. He felt possessive about them. And the Wipro we are seeing today is different. Maybe there's more professionalization in the industry. The industry has changed. I see that all across the kind of relationships that not just him, but a lot of them shared in the past. Maybe because they were all pioneers and it makes a difference. I think that guided his thing.
Lovely, awesome. I have a bunch of more questions since I have finished the book. And that's the first question Sandeep asked me. Did you finish the book? Yes, I did. That would show up in the kind of questions that I'm asking. But we have good 10, 12, 13 minutes. And we would pass on the mic and, any question around this book, around Sandeep himself maybe. Other books, flair of writing, right? It will be a great idea to bounce it off.
Also stories of Azim Premji that anybody would like to share.
Share, sir.
I can do a sequel to this book based on those.
Hi. So you talked about him not giving, for example, Jack Welch not getting any shares or not being in front of you. But there's a story about him, Amalner, all of the villagers. Can you please talk a bit about that?
The plant?
No, the villagers of
of
hometown,
course.
they all got rich through Wipro
Yeah,
shares.
so, that's where Wipro began as a company. That's where their first plant was. And a lot of people worked at that plant, and they knew his father very well. The senior Hasham Premji, who had gone there. In fact, there is a statue of the man in that town. And, that town, much like many towns in Gujarat, was built on shares of Reliance. So there, obviously, they bought Wipro shares initially. And, they held those shares. And when I didn't go there, but my co-author, Varun, had gone, So he said lots of people shared stories saying when my daughter was getting married, I pulled out my Wipro shares, and by then they were extremely valuable, as you can. Wipro, incidentally, was listed very early. It's a 1948 listed company, you know. But you know, so the real spur in the stock price came when they got into the IT business, and for many years, the food business was a drag on the, because you know obviously the multiple that you could get on a pure IT play was not the same as you would get on this thing. So then subsequently they separated the food business, which is incidentally privately held at this point of time, with Wipro Consumer Products business, probably worth at least another $10 billion to my reckoning. So yeah, the Amalner town is full of stories of when he used to go there as a young man. He used to take a train from Mumbai, and he would go there, go to the plant. He would interact with the people there who worked with him. You know, I met people who would say we would go out for lunch with him, you know, and they would go to in Mumbai, they would go to the Oberoi's. In those days, this is 70s, Oberoi's had a fixed meal lunch for 25 rupees, in which you'd get a chicken dish, some roti, and some dal or something. So he would wait for that day of the week. And then he would ask some one employee or the other thing, chalo, let's go and have lunch at Oberoi, and you know. And so those stories are very, very common in Amal. And they obviously look up to him, you know, both for who he's become and obviously the wealth that he's created for that town.
So thank you, very interesting. So I want to move a little different to ask you a question on, you just mentioned about the Wipro consumer products. Because if you look at, there is a different story where how he took on a company like Johnson and Johnson in the whole baby products. I've not read the book, but if there's something, you can throw some light on those areas, the whole Wipro soaps to this thing. Because everywhere worldwide, when you took over baby product, it is Johnson and Johnson. Wipro was the first company. Of course, later other companies joined. So some thought, some whatever. How did he select that business?
Actually, that's a very, very interesting dimension to Azim Premji. He started off as literally as a soap salesman, and you know, stories abound of him going to kirana shops in Mumbai and spending hours there, sitting on a sack or you know outside, basically observing why do customers not buy my product? Why do they buy you know HUL or Johnson Johnson, any of the other products? And he would talk to the shopkeepers and say, सामने रख दीजिए, why do you always keep our products at the back? And slowly I think he also figured two things. One is that you know in baby products or in foods, quality is you know paramount. There's no way anyone will compromise in quality for a product that they use with their children. And it kind of you know fitted into his own this thing of quality, which is that high quality and pricing. Of course, that was the other issue. But the part that I found most interesting in the building up of the Wipro consumer product business was his personal inputs there were probably higher than that in IT. Because fundamentally, he's not a digital native. He's not somebody he's not an engineer by training or education. Whereas the consumer products business, he understood intrinsically. And you know, that was because he spent hours together. I've been told that his driver used to drive him to any market and he would say, Abhi park kar do gaadi. And the guy would just go off to sleep because he knew that set to abhi 3 ghanta nahi aayega wapis. You know, he would do the rounds of the markets, go and spend time with the shopkeepers. And you know, we've all read about how HUL asked all its senior executives to go and do that. But through the 60s and 70s, once he came back, his ability to build that business, and you rightly mentioned, I mean, baby products is a very, very tough business for anyone to compete against a multinational like Johnson & Johnson. They still have a much smaller market share, but very highly respected brand. And subsequently, they launched soaps and many other products under that brand. And it's a massive brand today. And I think if they were to monetize that brand, I suppose at some point of time, they will think of listing it. And remember, they have 100% stake in that company. It would be interesting to see what they do with that money. They put that into philanthropy, which is a future thing. They also have an engineering business, you know, where they do a lot of, yeah. Of course, yeah, absolutely.
So, sir, very nicely you explained what Ajim Premji did in his entire life. It's really listen to you and understand the Ajim Premji's work, philanthropy work. My question is, regarding the philanthropy. Yesterday when I seen that Azim Premji, some book is here being get moderated, and the moderator has also quizzed you with so many questions. I call my friend, Mr. Shiprakash Panda, they are doing the very good social work here in and around Nagpur, around in 50 villages. They are working on the educations, culture, sports, even in health sectors. If suppose such organizations are working in the Nagpur, and Azim Premji has, you mentioned that around 90% of his wealth is going for the philanthropic work. So how such a social organization can be get benefited? Have you mentioned something about this in your book? That's my question.
Yes. I mean, what we've done in the book is we've tried to look at the various dimensions of philanthropy in the country. And to be honest, there are various models. One is the ground up model. And you know, you're doing that where you're actually in the ground and you're saying, even if I can make a difference to 100 people, that's already a difference. And you know, the other is the top down model of Wipro. And bear in mind that they don't give out money to other foundations. I mean, they do. They have a small wing which gives out this thing, but the bulk of the money is spent by the Wipro Foundation. So they believe in a particular area, education, that also re-education. The idea is that we will train teachers to be better in government schools, so that you know the quality of education in Indian schools gets. So they've in 6 states about I think 60 odd schools that they work very closely with. The idea being to improve the quality of pedagogy in the country. So that's one model, and you know there is the ground level model, and there's a third model. I'm incidentally doing another book on a person called Nand Kishore Chaudhary, who runs a company called Jaipur Rugs, based out of Jaipur. It's a company, it's a for-profit company, but it's run like a social enterprise in the sense they have 45,000 weavers. Most of them are women from the underprivileged society, underprivileged sections of society, and each of them they treat them as an entrepreneur. So the loom is in the house of the woman, and she weaves these carpets, rugs, dharis that they make, and she gets a share of the price of the carpet, and she gets a fixed salary for the carpet, and she also gets, so there's an incentive for her if the carpet is sold, if the carpet is sold at a higher price. So well, that's not germane to this particular panel. The point I'm making is that every kind of this thing in philanthropy, I think it is relevant. They've chosen one particular model, which is a top-down model, which is to put a massive amount of resource into one particular cause. And to be honest, in the book, we've questioned the impact of 20 years of the foundation. And we think that the kind of money that's gone in, almost about $3 to $4 billion by now, and the time frame, 20 years is a long time, it's not had the kind of impact that you would imagine, that level of funding to do. But maybe it's a long journey. And to give credit to the man, he wasn't even looking. Many philanthropists say, "I'll give the money today, and then hopefully, kal parso mein I'll be able to see the results of my money," because that's something that you all want to do. This man knew that this is going to be a long journey, and it's not going to end with in my lifetime. So he's prepared for that. He's prepared for it to be a long haul thing. And speaking to people who work with him, Anurag and all of these people, it's quite clear that they're comfortable with what they are doing. But having said that, we've also talked about it in the book that there is a new kind of philanthropy that's coming in. Obviously, Azim Premji personally has inspired many philanthropists, many businessmen. Zomato's founder, for instance, has already said that 80% of my wealth will go into philanthropy. And that's really the relevance of a man like this. In terms of business, I would say his success has been moderate. But in terms of philanthropy, in terms of inspiring many other Indian entrepreneurs to say, the money that I make is not entirely mine, it belongs to society, let me give it back, the Gandhian philosophy. I think that's where I think Premji's big credit is.
We have time for one more question, if there are any.
Yeah. So this Wipro idea, how did it get born? Like, how was it born?
The idea of Wipro?
Yeah.
Just the way that you are setting up your company, the way you set up a company, somebody thinks it's a good idea. This is a product that I understand, and I want to do more with it. Isn't that what you're doing? You want to do more with AI, right? So you set up your company and then you grow it. It's just that he was much older than you when he set it up.
Twice the age.
I would like to thank Mr. Sundeep Khanna and Ramkrishnan for this wonderful, informative session. I would like to invite Mr. Sameer Bendre to present a token of appreciation to Mr. Sundeep. This is a specially made monument, a frame of a monument from Nagpur. And also a token of appreciation for Mr. Ram Krishnan for his efforts. Right. Thank you all so much. For guests wishing to have their copies signed by the author or desirous of having a word with him, please head to the signing desks. You will find them at the lawn behind the author's lounge on the ground floor or opposite Laburnum on the first floor. Thank you, everyone.